Hi, welcome back to this mini-series answering 6 questions about spiritual gifts with answers found from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 to 11. And we're now looking at the 5th question. And the 5th question is this: what are some examples of spiritual gifts? What are examples? Are there some examples of these spiritual gifts? And Paul actually gives 9 examples in verses 8 to 10. This is what he writes. He says, and this is after he's just said, to each one, every believer gets at least one gift. To each one is given a manifestation of the Spirit for the common good to build up the church. He says this: for to one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge, according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the Spirit. To another gifts of healings by the one Spirit. To another the working of miracles. To another prophecy, to another the ability to distinguish between spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. So Paul lists 9 gifts. And what I want you to see here is that in our Western sort of Excel spreadsheet minds, what we like to do is we're like, okay, these are the 9 gifts. And we get a little column and we'll put the titles of the gifts, and then we'll make our rows and we'll start to delineate this gift from this gift. And we begin to very technically divide up these gifts. And then we realize there's more gifts at the end of chapter 12. And so then we got to extend the rows, we got to add more gifts. Then we're like, Romans chapter 12 has got some gifts. So then we have to extend more gifts. Then Ephesians chapter 4 talks about gifts, and they're a little bit different than these other things we're talking about. So then we try to do like a sub-column. And, I'm joking here, but we have a tendency to say these 9 gifts, that's it. And what I'm saying is this is just a representative example of the great varieties, the diverse varieties of gifts that Paul has been talking about earlier in the chapter. He says there's all kinds of gifts. There's a great variety of gifts. So here's just 9 examples here in verses 8 to 10. So I'll go through these, and some of these I'm not going to go through each of the gifts specifically. I'm just going to just read them off again for you. But in other videos, we're going to define each of those gifts. And we've already looked at some of these. Utterance of wisdom or word of wisdom. I looked at that at a previous video on revelatory gifts. Then you have the word of knowledge. I referenced that as well. And then you have gift of faith. And I'm going to address this in a video that's coming. You've got the gift of faith. You got gifts of healing. You got working of miracles. We have prophecy that we're going to look at later. And you have the ability to distinguish between spirits. We talked about that one in a previous video. And then you have various kinds of tongues. So the ability to speak in tongues and the ability to interpret those tongues. So it's important that you understand these are not the 9 gifts. These are just examples of gifts. So it's important that you understand that. These are just examples. It's almost like Paul off the top of his head. It's like, okay, you got the prophecy, you got distinguishing of spirits, we got tongues, interpretation. He's almost listing them off at the top of his head. It's not quite the intense columns and differentiations. And I talked about this earlier, but it's important. I get questions like this, like what's the difference between word of wisdom, word of knowledge, and prophecy? Because those are revelatory. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that it's as clean as we want it to be. I think there's quite a bit of overlap in there. And honestly, the Bible doesn't tell us a lot. Like the only time we hear about word of wisdom and word of knowledge, like that actual gift, the only time we ever hear it is right here in 1 Corinthians 12. Like there's nowhere else that Paul goes, this is the word of wisdom and blah, 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 and then defines it and then shows what it's like. We don't have that in Scripture. So we're functioning with where we can look at people who had wisdom and people who seem to have words of knowledge, that have knowledge from that have been dropped into their head, revelatory knowledge about a situation. We're able to discern some of those things, but it's not. There's quite a bit of overlap here. It's not quite as clean and tidy as I think many of us would like it. So that's the main thrust of this question. What are some examples? Here are just 9 examples. I'll go to define them in other videos, but just as an encouragement, don't get so locked up on delineating and differentiating each of these gifts in some sort of stressed out way. Just think about it. Paul, off the top of his head, he's listing just 9 of them that he thinks of right then. So join us for the very last video. We're going to answer the 6th and final question about spiritual gifts that's answered in 1 Corinthians 12, verses 4 to 11. We'll see you then.